Hey, what's up, everybody? Andrew from FantasyAid here, joined with Tom from Fantasy Sports Addicts Anonymous.
Hey, how's it going,
And
Andrew?
doing pretty good. How are you?
Doing all right. Excited to be with you today.
Yep.
Talking baseball. Woo!
Yep. Spring is in the air. Spring ball's playing. I watched a little bit of the Cardinals game today. It is nice that baseball is back.
Enjoying it. Enjoying it. Yeah, it's the first podcast you've done in a minute. Obviously, our YouTube channel, the one we're sharing, is temporarily shut down as far as live streaming, right?
Right.
But so we're bringing this podcast on your channel.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's I haven't I podcasted with you a little bit this year, but I haven't podcasted really too much about fantasy baseball since last year when the season was on. So apologize if I'm a little rusty here, but we'll give it a go.
Well, that's all right. I know you're itching. You got a lot of topics you want to cover today. I mean, you want to just jump right in? You want to start with news, or you just want to dive into this list of topics you got here?
Let's just jump right in. And the first topic I have is, what does spring mean to you? And what I mean by that is, what does spring training mean to you in terms of when you watch? How much do you value? Oh, this guy's done really well. A good example is Franco when he had that huge spring. Like, a lot of people put a lot of stock into him. How much do you put in when it comes to spring training?
How much do I put in? Personally, very little. It's nice to see. For instance, especially the hitters. You like to see a guy that's coming in hot. Maybe played in the Dominican leagues or the winter leagues. Um, you like to see that. It's an encouraging sign, but obviously those stats don't mean anything other than the fact that, maybe your guy's just sort of locked in on certain types of pitches or just locked in generally. That's a good sign going in. But, I've seen it so many times where, like, I think back to like Franco or even Yasiel Puig, his rookie season, just monster spring. Uh, you overlook it, and then you miss out on a Yasiel Puig. But then Yasiel Puig has like 2 hot months in his rookie season, and the rest of the time it's, you know, dragging ass. And all of a sudden now he's fantasy relevant. It took how many years for that? So,
Yeah.
uh, there's been ups and downs. I don't put much stock in it, much faith in it, but it's nice to see. It's always kind of an encouraging sign. Now you think about pitchers as opposed to batters. You talk about, this was a conversation James and I were having yesterday. Thor, Noah Syndergaard's throwing 100 miles an hour, breaking off 100 miles an hour already.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Um,
watched that start. He was on point.
Now that's encouraging. That's definitely a good sign, but you're almost damned if you do and damned if you don't in that sense because, like, well, save a little bit for the rest of the season. I hope that 100 miles an hour is still there when I need you in the fantasy playoffs, come September, August. But then again, the converse of that, or the inverse, I guess, I don't know, would be that he's throwing 92, 93, and there's no velocity and the pitches are flat. And you know what I mean? So it's kind of that, like, what do you really want to see? I just, mainly I want to see health. What about you? I mean, what are you really looking forward to spring training?
When I look to spring training, I look more towards job openings and who's competing, because that's really what matters if you perform, is if you're competing for a job.
Yeah.
Prime example, Ryan McMahon right now is competing for the first base job for the Rockies, and I'm keeping a real close eye on him. And then you also have closer battles. You don't know who's closing for the Rangers yet in 2018. So what I
Diamondbacks
really
as
want to
well.
keep an eye on is what jobs are open, who's competing, and how are they doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's, you know, outside of health, you want to see that rookie you're stashing for dynasty leagues, or that prospect you might draft, or the rookie you might draft for redraft. Win that position battle. You got, right, Andahar with the Yankees going
Right.
against Drury, and
Yeah, it's got
it's,
Kingery trying
yeah,
to
there's
pack
so many position battles right now that I think we know how most of that's going to turn out. Most of those minor league guys will probably shuffle back to the minor leagues because of service time. But
Yeah,
there's still, you see there's a handful of these guys where it's like, okay, David Dahl, that's your job. Go win it. Uh,
absolutely. And of course,
McMahon,
One of the
Same
biggest
thing.
name, Acuna.
Yeah,
Watching him.
Acuna Matata, absolutely. There are quite a few of these type players this year, which is it's a good time to be a baseball fan, especially if you're into prospects and rookies. So yeah, I guess basically, right, you want to see health and you want to see the guys that you're waiting for with a position battle. You want to see them have a hot spring, not necessarily too hot, right? Because it's too
Mhm.
hot, might taper off. But you want them to win the job.
Absolutely. And aforementioned Ryan McMahon is currently 6 for 12, batting 500, one walk, no strikeout. So I'm pretty encouraged there. I'll talk about McMahon a little bit later. And we'll talk a little bit later about pitchers and when it comes to spring,
Pitching
too.
battles, yeah.
But I wanted to talk a little bit about two outfielders, one being drafted a little bit before, and that's Andrew Benintendi and Christian Yelich.
Okay. Okay.
Both players, I are Benintendi's being drafted at 41.55 according to Fantrax, and Yelich is at 58.49. Not a giant difference, but there is a difference between the two, and I find myself leaning more and more toward Yelich more than Benintendi. I know Benintendi's younger. He went 2020 last season. Yelich didn't. But Yelich is on a new team with the Brewers, a pretty good offense. Of course, Benintendi's on a pretty good offense himself, and it's a very interesting to compare the two players.
Uh, I guess I'm still on the fence about this. I like both in a lot of ways. I mean, again, decent average, good power speed combos. Uh, I think we kind of know what Yelich is or Yelich. We kind of know what his ceiling is. It might be a slightly higher and a better lineup with a better team, especially one like the Brewers that runs constantly. Um, I still kind of feel like maybe Benintendi's ceiling is just a scotch higher at this point in his career. He's younger. Again, a very nice lineup to play in. I wouldn't have a problem drafting either of these. However, at this point, I have no shares in either. So, um, I guess if I had to choose right now, you were making me pick. I'd probably go with Yelich later because at that 40 range, the 41 to 45 sort of range where you might get a Benintendi, I'm probably looking for a starting pitcher or a power bat,
Mm-hmm.
and then you wait a little bit longer and you get the Yelich, and it's like you got sort of the same thing. So there is that. That's probably more of the strategy I would employ.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see as the off season progresses. If their ADP will close at all. If Yelich will gain more traction now that he's on the Brewers. And you could even throw in a guy like Lorenzo Kane, who is maybe not the power, but definitely the stolen bases with those two. There seems to be a pretty good amount of 2020 got possibility guys this year.
Do you have Yelich pegged for much of a bump in at the Brewers or not?
I think it gives him an extra home run or two. I would peg him at I would say safely 2015 guy. Maybe he'll run a little bit more because he's on the Brewers, and that could bring him up to 2020. But I think he'll, reach around 20, 22 home runs this year.
Both will give you solid production. You're not going to lose out either way with either of those. Um, let's talk about another speedy outfielder. Speedy,
Absolutely.
right?
D. Gordon. I feel
Speedy.
like that he gets lost in the shuffle a little bit because this happened so early in the offseason when he was traded to the Seattle Mariners that people forget. And even I forget because when I was first drafting, I was like, I don't want a second baseman this early. But D. Gordon has been playing well in the outfield. They've already tried him out in center field, and he's done well so far. And so he'll probably be gaining outfield eligibility this year, because he's not going to take Cano's spot, so he will gain it. And he in a five outfielder league, a guy that can steal 60 bases, he could be a very valuable, versatile player on your fantasy team.
Absolutely. I mean, I still probably lean towards drafting him as a second baseman just because the batting average and relative production, relative to the lineup he's in. And of course, the stolen base. I still think I like him as a second baseman. That's where I'd be drafting him to play him, not in the outfield. But that flexibility second base, center field, or second base, outfield, that's pretty luxurious, especially in Roto, where you can just shuffle them around as you need. And maybe you draft him as a second baseman, but later in the draft, you're like, I don't have any outfielders. So you shuffle him to the outfield when he's outfield eligible, right?
Absolutely. I took him in the Battle of the Podcast League, and I plan on having him as my outfielder, even though he's only second base eligible right now, so I can't slot him in the outfield slot just yet. But it won't be long until I can slot him in there.
Now let me ask you this: do you feel like it's sort of imperative when you draft D. Gordon that you draft also Billy Hamilton? Something about the two, like you almost, to me, in my world, if I'm drafting one, I have to draft both, ideally. Uh, right? Because at that point, you've got roughly what 120 stolen bases lined up in
Yeah,
a matter of 5 picks.
if you don't grab Turner, D. Gordon, Billy Hamilton, yeah. I mean, for me, I don't know. I'm trying not to get so much hung up on average, but I still kind of hung up on Billy Hamilton. I wish he had ended up and traded and in a better lineup. Although it could be better. Talking about positional eligibility, Nick Senzel's been trying out different spots, but I just wish he had ended up in a better lineup.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's still plenty of time for trades. I mean, the Reds want to make room for Stinky Winky, and I mean, I don't think Duvall's all that necessary. I mean, I think
Mhm.
of the two, James and I have talked about this before. Of the sort of four outfield situation, you want Stinky Winky in there, but you got Shebler and Duvall to consider at the corner outfield positions. Which one of them is more valuable? And James and I kind of agreed that it's Shebler by a slight margin. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, Reds could still make a trade. I don't know. I'm surprised they would trade Hamilton in a lot of ways, just because he seems like such a mainstay. But maybe they're just, again, all right. We waited forever. You steal a lot, but damn it, you don't get on base enough. I don't
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. I mean, I feel like that's D. Gordon is Billy Hamilton just with an average.
Who can hit? Yeah, with a hit tool. That's nice. So, all right, staying in the outfield here. I know you want to talk about everybody's favorite, right?
Yeah, probably one of yours. Last year, just Dong,
Just Dongs.
Shady Martin.
Woo! Everybody loves JD Martinez. Of course, he signed that 5-year deal with the Red Sox finally after all the negotiation issues.
Yep, finally, and obviously it boosts his value. It would have he would have had this probably similar value in Arizona as well, but what it really boosts is the lineup surrounding him. Then that's Bogey, Benintendi, Mookie Betts. All those guys get a nice little bump because JD Martinez is gonna hold down a position, the cleanup spot that really hasn't been there since David Ortiz.
No, no, no. I mean, it's going to be great for everybody. I think the person that's going to improve the most, honestly, in this lineup, to me, to me, is Mookie Betts. I could be wrong. Call me crazy, but I feel like if you got Betts hitting in front of JD Martinez, there's a little lineup protection. Maybe I don't know. I just feel like everybody gets better, but Betts, I think, run production and just having somebody behind him in the lineup, that's I'd like to see a bounce back from Betts. I mean, you finally admitted he's a first round player,
Yeah,
right?
if you hadn't seen my article on six-man rotation, after a long struggle where I was fighting saying, you can get this guy here, you can get this guy here, I did wave the white flag. I do think Mookie Betts is a first-round player, and he's a guy I am looking towards drafting now.
Now, who's in your opinion, who benefits the most here? See, I say Betts because I picture Betts batting second or something like that. I don't know, but
I think
what about you?
I think Betts and Benintendi. I think both would be hitting ideally 1-2, just ahead of JD Martinez. And I don't know if you saw this on Twitter today, but Hanley Ramirez said he's going for a 30-30 season. So
Wow.
big aspirations there from him. But if Hanley can bounce back, you got if you can have Xander Bogaerts be a shell of what he was in his best season, you have the makings of one of the best lineups in the major leagues.
Well, and don't forget about Devers or Devers. Again,
That's
we're not the best with name pronunciations around here, but again, more power to the Red Sox, literally and figuratively. So, I try to think. Oh, who's dang it, I keep forgetting. Third base, second base, guy filling in for Pedroia while he's out. You know who I'm talking about?
I do.
I missed him last night in the draft. Evan got me. I can't think of his name, but anyways, I think again he's another guy that just makes that lineup all that much better, more speed. I don't know. God, why can't I remember the dude's name? Somebody, like, I'm totally drawing a blank here. Somebody look it up. All right, we're terrible. We don't have our facts prepared, clearly. But that was a thought that just popped into my head. I'll have to take a look and remind myself who that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. I just think let's just take a peek here. Let's just look around the lineup. Of course, they got a new manager now. It's going to be quite an interesting situation. Okay.
Bringing up their depth chart here. Eduardo Nunez.
That's right. There we go. Thank you. I forgot about Eddie. Eduardo. Yeah. I always forget about him. But I remember him, and I just can't remember his name, apparently. Yes, Eduardo Nunez filling in for Pedroia. I don't know how long Pedroia is supposed to be out, but I really like that. And once Pedroia is back, I'm assuming Eduardo becomes a super flex, super utility type.
Yeah, he can play anywhere.
So I just really like that lineup. I mean, basically the only player in that lineup I don't care for would probably be Jackie Bradley Jr., JBJ, and he's not even that bad. He's not even that bad.
Well, and their catcher situation, because they're so, they're split time between Christian Vasquez and Sandy Leon.
Well, don't forget they're bringing Swihart. They're out of options. Yeah. Swihart, so Swihart will be catching this year.
So yeah, that's a lot of time to split between three players.
But yeah, signing like JD Martinez basically makes your entire lineup that much better. I mean, look, I'm looking at Jackie Bradley here. These are pretty weak sauce numbers, but he has those flashes where he's totally roster worthy, the kind of guy you want on your team for like a week or two at a time, maybe. But never has really completely put it together. But like I said, JD Martinez should help everyone.
Absolutely. And making a switch from hitting to pitching, pitching seems to be going a lot earlier this year, especially, what everyone's calling the top four.
Yeah, the big four is kind of the big talk. You've got your Kershaw, your Sale, your Kluber, and of course,
Max Scherzer.
Yeah, Scherzer. So you got all four of these guys going roughly. I mean, we've seen all four go in the first round in some of our 15 team drafts that we've been doing, some of the mocks we've done. So there's a very real possibility that you're picking in that second or third tier of pitching by the time you're like, oh, I need a staff ace.
Absolutely. That's where I found myself in the Battle of the Podcast League that we're in. That's where I find myself right now.
Same thing for me. I was in the same boat. Was not excited. I mean, Carlos Carrasco, I'm not 100% on. I'm not a big cookie believer, but when you're down to crumbs, you look to the cookie, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, same thing. It's just one of those things, a lot of pitching, because it is so, some of it's so premium right now with hitting being what it is. If you want a quality arm, unless you're willing to like get really creative later in the draft, you want to pay for that ace.
Absolutely. And it's the mock drafts we've done so far, it's really hard to get creative in the back end of the draft if you want pitching. There's just no one there, no one that excites you that like, oh, this guy could win the job and he could do well or something. There's no one like that in the back end of the draft.
Not for the most part. I am willing to hang my hat on a few rookies, a few like younger type players or guys that are kind of ready to break out. There's a handful of players I'm willing to draft in that range, just out of like probably sheer desperation. But one of the big things I'm promoting this year, just the more I've looked at it, the more I've seen it done, the more I'm starting to do it myself, is just stacking relievers, just stacking high strikeouts, low ERA,
Absolutely. Get
high
those guys that
leverage.
can get
Yeah.
100 Ks. The Brad Hands, the all those guys that got over 100 Ks last year, definitely, yeah.
And you don't even necessarily they don't have to be closers. I mean, you can take I've got this coming up in a video I'm posting, just kind of comparing the numbers you could get out of like a David Robertson and a Chris Davinsky. Basically, in like 150 innings, you're getting 200 strikeouts and 17 wins.
Yeah,
So that's pretty good, with quality ratios, low WHIP, low ERA. So
absolutely.
all of a sudden, maybe you missed that ace in the beginning of the draft, and you focused heavily on your corner infield, or you got power and speed combo or something like that. You can cobble together a couple of relief pitchers, and all of a sudden you're looking like that's almost an ace. So
Hmm.
don't be afraid to stack relief pitching. Just pay attention to the clean ratios, high strikeouts, and guys that are pitching in high leverage situations. Uh,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to find these guys out there. There's a lot of them now. I mean,
There's a lot of them. A sleeper I would throw out there is Drew Steckenrider for the Miami Marlins. He doesn't get drafted often enough, although he had a great year last year. Like you said, there's a ton of those guys.
just keep your eyes out. Look for guys that, pitch about, I don't know, 60, 65 innings, roughly 100 strikeouts. Those are pretty nice K per 9 ratios that you're going to be hopefully taking to the bank, especially guys in high leverage situations where, they might be hanging a W on them. So,
Absolutely,
and
and
the way the game's changing too, it's more important to pay attention to that. I think just overall, most leagues have transitioned from pure saves leagues to saves plus holds or saves and holds individually, just to reflect how pitching works now in the modern game.
yeah,
And
there's a lot of relievers like in Andrew Miller. That's the best reliever in that bullpen, but he's not the closer.
and you think about how few innings, like the big four, those guys can give you, 7 to 9 innings. There are very few starting pitchers out there that can go that deep into a game these days, and just for a myriad of reasons. A lot of it being preserving arms. You got teams with 6-man rotations, guys that pitch 5, 6 innings, maybe at best. And then it's the rest of the job. The bullpen does the rest. So just keep that in mind. If you don't get that ace early on, look to the bullpen.
Absolutely, and something you probably know a lot more than me about is the humidor. It will be installed in Arizona's ballpark this season, like it is in Coors Field.
Yeah, it's there. It's
Do
up
you
and
think
running.
there's been an overreaction or an underreaction to this humidor?
I have a very unpopular and controversial opinion about this. I'm going to just go ahead and say the difference is negligible. I've been assaulted and verbally and damn near physically over this, but I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I know how hot and dry it is here. And I know how humidors work, and I know how air conditioning works, and there's a lot of factors in the ballpark in Chase Field. The listed reason for installing a humidor last year by the team was not so much about controlling offense, but more about giving pitchers a better feel for the ball, which in and of itself might, slightly improved pitch command or slightly improved field grip on the ball. Maybe the ball breaks a little bit better now. That in and of itself should slightly reduce the offense. But as far as like a whole deadened ball thing, and I'm just, I'm not buying it. I'm not seeing it because I lived here in this heat 35 years of my life,
Mm-hmm.
which is my whole life. And I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. Maybe the data suggests otherwise. But if it happens and I'm wrong, it'll be like Tris. I'll probably not eat my undies. No, I honestly, I don't feel like it's going to be as big of a deal. I really don't think a team like the Diamondbacks, whose entire fan base basically is built around offense because, again, as you know, home runs and offense puts butts in the seats. And if
Mhm.
there's one thing that the Diamondbacks need, it's butts and seats. And so killing the offense and having like, these pitching duels, as much as those were good games back in the day when we had Kurt Schilling and Randy Johnson pitching these pitching duels, very few people ever went. I don't know why that was. You could go to so many Kurt Schilling starts and so many Randy Johnson starts, all of which should have been sold out, and there'd be crickets, nobody there. I mean, I watched Kurt Schilling pitch a one. All right, Diamondbacks scored a run. I think he had a one-hit shutout, and the game was over in less than 2 hours, which was actually, they talk about pace of play, but
Mhm.
because it was a pitcher's duel, it was like, not, everybody's like bored and not paying, people in Arizona want some home runs. So the franchise isn't going to kill off their best, sales tactic, essentially. What's their selling point is home runs and offense. And it's a team built around offense. This team's not built around pitching. People talk
No.
about the Diamondbacks pitching being fairly good.
I mean, you got
It's
Ray and
okay.
Godley who are more than okay.
I'm not all right. Look, I'm not 100% on this Greinke thing. I think Greinke's still kind of the anchor of the rotation, but there's a decline clearly going on. Ray is due for regression. I'm not buying Ray as a complete ace. And Godley, I mean, I think Godley's probably of those three the most stable, just
Hmm.
because he's a ground ball specialist.
Yeah,
And sinker ball players work well in Arizona. Think back to Brandon Webb.
I kind
Uh,
of find myself in the middle when it comes to humidor. It does scare me off with guys like Jake Lamb, but that's a kind of a bias because I never liked Jake Lamb to begin with, and it's just kind of another reason not to draft him. You know.
there's a lot of that to be said. I can buy a lot of those arguments. I don't know if I can buy this whole notion of Paul Goldschmidt sliding all the way to the end of the first round over this
No, no.
humidor thing. I think that's complete overreaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And don't forget, we play half the games on the road in other, hitter friendly parks. So
Like Coors Field and all that. Yeah.
exactly. And how much has the offense actually slowed down in Coors Field? Because of all the Rockies D-backs games I watch, I don't see any shortage of offense from either team.
Right. The Rockies were actually the third in runs scored last year.
So I'm not gonna freak out over a humidor. That's just me. I've taken a lot of heat for it on Twitter. A lot of analysts and experts and writers have been very offended at my take on this, but I'm just saying I'm not alarmed. And the other thing that's fascinating here, I don't know if you caught this. A lot of people seem to have missed this fact. Uh, Major League Baseball has instituted a league-wide policy now where all of the balls in every stadium will be climate controlled. So
Hmm.
it's not just a humidor. In some environments, it will function technically as a humidor um, by regulating, they have to be controlled in an air conditioned environment, basically. So if you think about humid climates, you put something in an air conditioned environment, air conditioning essentially draws out the moisture in the air to cool it down.
Hmm.
Well, so this is potentially a pretty level playing field for every stadium, in the major leagues. Uh, I'm not really all that alarmed. I mean, maybe we see league wide some offense dip, but that's also in addition, that's in addition to the humidor. So basically, every stadium will have climate controlled baseballs this year. So
Okay.
call it a humidor, call it climate control, whatever you want. But I'm just saying this is still a pretty neutral playing field.
Absolutely. And we said we were going to talk a little bit more about spring later, and that's about some pitching debuts. And we got two Japanese guys. Of course, Mickey started out in majors but went to Japan. Both of them sort of struggled in their spring debut. Otani gave up 2 runs in an inning in the third, and Mickey gave up 6 runs in an inning and 2/3.
Again, it's spring. I'm not reading into it.
Yeah.
Until there's some kind of issue, especially, I mean, I'm probably not going for Mikolas or Mikiolas. I don't know how to say his name, but he's probably not a guy I'm even looking at in most drafts, to be honest. And that may be my own, undoing, but
Mm.
uh, and I'm probably also not drafting much Otani. I have one dynasty share that I'm not
Yeah,
tremendously
I
excited
find
about.
need to be overdrafted. Because I know on a lot of most of the formats, he's a double player, and that helps out his value. But when I'm drafting Otani, I would draft him to be a pitcher, and I don't feel comfortable taking him in the 60s or the 50s where he's going right now.
Not at his current ADP. And most of the time, though, from what I've seen in most of the drafts, he is sliding a bit. So I'm assuming that ADP will drop just a bit. Again, Angels going with the 6-man rotation. They're going to take it real easy with the guy breaking him in. It's a big transition. They want to focus on all aspects of his game. So they're going to give him plenty of opportunity to hit and DH and do all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Um, I just think until there's some sort of really, really alarming thing, like with the Brent Honeywell before, he was throwing BP and, you know, walks off the mound swearing. Until there's something along those lines or a major dip in velocity or complete loss of pitch command and control, I'm not going to worry about a rough first spring training start. I mean,
Right.
I've seen Randy Johnson, Brandon Webb, Kurt Schilling. I've seen so many greats get rocked in spring starts, and it's been no big deal. I mean, usually I want to see the pitchers final start usually to be like a good 4 or 5 innings maybe. And then that's where I want to see him kind of locked in. Like a couple years ago, Ryan and I caught the White Sox Dodgers game in Glendale. I think it was like one of the last games of the season. And we met Seth the Sportsman from, Seth the Sportsman, if you know who Seth the Sportsman is, he's another fantasy analyst. We met up with him at the game, but it was Kershaw Sale. They both went damn near 6 innings. It was an awesome pitcher's duel. And they were both just locked in. And that's exactly what you want to see. That's plenty. I don't need to see more than that. But by their kind of final start, you want to hope that your guys kind of tuned it in. And most pitchers actually start out the season somewhat slow anyways. Think about like Corey Kluber, notoriously slow starter.
Absolutely.
But by the end of the season, you're like, holy smokes, look at those numbers. Like,
right. And the numbers, especially for Otani, mean a lot less than for Miles Mikolas, who is actually competing for a spot, whereas Otani already has a spot in the rotation guaranteed.
Yeah, I'm not. Again, it goes back to the spring thing. I'm not really worried about. To me, spring's about like just finding, just being comfortable, either getting the job or holding your job down, and just kind of getting ready for the season, mostly conditioning wise. Like, I mean, most of those guys are there to go golfing anyhow, so I don't think they even put much stock in it, to be perfectly honest.
And the other pitcher I wanted to talk about was Snell, who dazzled in his debut. He pitched 2 perfect innings, strikes out 4, and he's pitching from that middle of the mound, middle of the pitching rubber, like he did in the second half of last year. And he
broke out.
Yeah, he broke out in the second half, and he's repeating that in spring training this year. And you got to feel pretty good about the former top prospect.
Absolutely. Snell's kind of one of those guys. And this is another thing I've always said about prospects, especially pitching prospects. They're going to take more time than an offensive prospect usually. I mean, there's very few exceptions to that. I mean, I think Jose Fernandez is maybe one of the outside exceptions, but usually pitchers take a little bit longer to kind of come into their own.
Right.
And it does.
Rios did. Yeah,
and maybe it's a product of coaching. Like a pitching coach that can show them how to refine a certain pitch, or just there's all kinds of variables in that. But Snell's always had the pedigree. He's just one of those guys it seems like we've been waiting for like what 3-4 years at least. And I'm ready to get him in pretty much any draft I can. There's going to be very few drafts where I can, I'm sure. And I think as the spring goes on, his stock's going to just rise. I mean, he's climbing up the charts like a hit single, And he should.
Right.
He should be.
Right now, he's a sleeper, but if he continues to pitch well, that could change fast, like you said.
Nah, I'll be happy to have some Snell in as many drafts as I can. Right now, I don't think I have any shares. I don't believe I got him last night in our mock, but definitely a guy I'll be targeting if I can get him. And I mean, I don't know. What do you say? Like, give us a projection here for Snell. What do you say? Like 12 wins, 4 ERA.
12. I'd go so far as to say 3.50 ERA. Maybe right around 9Ks per 9, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking somewhere around 180, maybe 200 innings. He's probably close to. He's probably ready for about 200 innings, but it is the Rays, so who knows what they're going to do with him.
Right.
Um, yeah, the Rays are just kind of a dumpster fire right now in terms of
Yeah, outside of their rotation.
fantasy. Yeah, I mean, really, as far as fantasy like usability or fantasy friendliness, Rays are probably like one of the least friendly teams. Now, there will be pieces. That's the thing. I mean, Snell's going to have his ups and downs. There's definitely going to be some bad starts out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and maybe even some stretches of bad starts. But I think overall, you're going to get a pretty good return on Snell this year, especially where he's most likely being drafted. He's been drafted like in the 200s,
Yeah.
or at least the late, post 150. But with Tampa Bay, that you're going to find a few other gems too. That's the other thing that's going to be fascinating to see. Like, as bad as that team looks right now, I can guarantee you there are going to be more fantasy relevant players than we think there are right now. At the end of the
Right.
season, we'll be like, oh yeah, wow, that guy really did kind of come
That
out with some
probably
value.
applies to Miami too.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, look to Florida for late value this year. Any of the teams that are really cheap, yeah, there's probably going to be some in-season pickup value for you. So keep that in mind.
And
Um,
we got a draft coming up tomorrow. The Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational starts tomorrow, March
oh,
1st.
I have had that not just marked on the calendar, but like stamped in blood. I'm excited. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
I mean,
I
we've got
mean,
a
I'm
lot
not
of drafts
excited
going
about
on.
my draft spot, but I'm excited about the thing in general.
Yeah, let's all right, just for everybody who isn't familiar with that, let's explain the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational. It's a series of I believe 13 leagues on Fantrax, 13 leagues of 15 teams apiece. It's roto setup and I believe we draft 28 players apiece. So it's not too deep, kind of deep, but not uncomfortably deep, you're not in over your head.
Right.
And it's full of analysts, experts, writers, of all sort of levels. We've got some big names in there, some big heavy hitters, some guys from CBS.
Mm.
We've got mid-level guys. We got low fruit like us. Like hey, I wrote a few articles and did a podcast or two.
Yeah.
But I think everybody's equally talented. It's going to be pretty tough competition, and so we're all in separate leagues. Anybody who knows each other's put into a separate league with other fantasy people. So we're not, you and I aren't competing against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're not going to be competing against Cubby Knoll or Reese.
Well,
Uh,
sort of. We are. There will be a final winner at the end of the year.
well,
So
yeah, I was going to
sort
say,
of competing against each other, just not in the same league.
yeah, there's like a best overall finish, which, I mean, that'd be fun. I'm not even necessarily concerned about that, but I mean, my goal is just win the league I'm in
Yeah, absolutely.
and then, let the rest fall where it is. But I mean, these great fantasy baseball invitationals are pretty exciting. I'm sure, if you've been on our website or watched any of our videos or heard about anything going on Twitter lately, you've seen a bunch about it. And I know people are excited to kind of follow along with us. We'll probably post stuff on the website, fantasysportsaddicts.com, keep you guys posted and updated, right?
And we'll probably be tweeting out our picks on Twitter. So make sure to give each of us a follow. You can follow me on Twitter at FantasyAid1, and you can follow Tom on Twitter at FSAA. The word the letter FS, the word double, and A.
Yep, that's correct. FSAA. And yeah, I mean, we'll be tweeting picks, talking about the draft, probably talking smack and screaming out, "Run him!" Somebody steals our players in the draft, It's gonna be pretty exciting. I'm excited about this. This is, probably one of the bigger, more, flashy leagues I've ever been in. I mean, I consider ours to be pretty damn good, but these are exciting though, regardless. Now tell me where you're picking in the draft. You've got
I have the number 8 pick.
so in your league you're picking eighth, right? Smack dab in the middle, which is
Yep.
basically no man's land, right?
Absolutely, and not thrilled with the pick at all.
Do you have anybody you're specifically targeting, maybe with your first pick,
Uh,
or just whatever is there?
maybe if Betts falls to 8th, I doubt he will. A lot of fantasy industry people love Betts, so if he falls, or Trey Turner's not gonna fall there. You
No,
know,
Turner's been going about top 5, I think.
yeah, maybe Chris Bryant, something like that. Or maybe I go pitching. Depending. It all depends on the first 7 picks.
Grab a Kershaw and just call it a minute on the
Yeah,
pitching. All right. Now I'm gonna get some bats. I know James Cubby is picking 8th in his league, so he's in the same spot. He was not enjoying our mock draft last night. He was not enjoying picking from that 8 hole. And I know from the mock draft, the slow mock we did probably a month ago, I
yeah.
also did not like picking in the middle of a 15-team draft this year. I'm comfortable in the middle of a draft some years, but this year, for whatever reason, I'm really not. And I think it's the way the pitching's allocated in
Hmm.
relation to other top bats, if that makes sense. Just because that big 4 really throws things off. You don't see pitching getting drafted that early for the most part. And now you are, because it is such a premium that, to me, it just kind of like, it just throws the rest of the draft off. Again, I'm comfortable drafting anywhere if I have to, but
Hmm.
I'd much rather be where I'm picking, which is 14th. I'm not quite at the wheel or the turn pick there, but I might as well be 14th out of 15th. I'm just cherry picking what I want. Okay, maybe I
Yeah,
miss what I want on one side or the other. That was happening last night. Like I'd miss a pick in front of me, or Evan would take, with the 15th pick, and he'd take something I was looking forward to. But there was still that like immediate fallback option instead of waiting 15 picks in between my picks. So
absolutely. Yeah, and that's where I am in the Battle of the Podcast League. I think I'm 14th, and I've been liking that pick despite my pitching staff so far.
that's a nice, yeah. I think this year you want to be on one end of the draft or the other, as close to the end of either the beginning or the end of the draft. I don't care what draft it is, even 12 teams, 20 teams, right? I think you kind of want to be at the end of one of those spectrums, not in the middle, at the end, one end or the other, the bookends. But yeah, these are going to be good. And I mean, let's not forget, we've got other leagues that are beginning, just as good, I think, but maybe not as high profile.
Absolutely. I mean, we got all your FSAA leagues coming up soon.
Yep.
Should be a lot of fun to see who gets kept, who gets thrown out, and
The
who gets
dynasty.
picked.
Yeah, now actually that reminds me, I have one spot left for FSAA head to head. So if anybody, listens to FantasyAid, wants a spot in one of our it's a little bit deep. It's not too deep of a league. It's 14 teams, but just standard head to head, 5x5. Nothing fancy, but competitive league.
Absolutely. If you sign up and want to join that, yeah, you will be playing in one of the most competitive leagues you've ever played in.
Yeah, I mean, just leave a comment down below or give us a tweet and we'll get you a link.
Uh,
Let's talk about 6-man rotation. I know you've been writing a lot of articles over there.
Yeah, definitely. Just if you've noticed, there's been a lack of content on my channel lately, and that's because I've been writing so much for 6-man rotation. It's not that I haven't been, talking about fantasy baseball. It's I've been using a different medium, and that's writing through 6-man rotation. I got another article that will be coming out today on Ryan McMahon and where he is right now on the first base job. I've done sleepers there, busts. I had the whole Mookie Betts wrestling thing over whether he was a first rounder or not. So just a lot of content to check out on 6-man rotation. And then, of course, it's not just me. We got a lot of talented writers there writing about, we write about minor leagues, we write about the major leagues, and we write fantasy. So give us a check out at 6manrotation.com.
Very good. Yes, and there's a lot of quality articles. Andrew, you've written all of them pretty much. You've written the majority of them, I'd say.
And then, of
You're all
course,
over
we
there.
got you over at Fantasy Sports Addicts Anonymous. You were just released 2 videos yesterday. I know you got more planned. So what's upcoming for you?
Well, today we got part 2 of the bad commissioning series. This is the follow up to last night's bad commissioning, bad fantasy sports commissioning part 1. And this is a story about getting retribution on a bad commissioner. And this actually happened. This is a true story. It happened last week, and I'll be sharing that. It'll be fun. But of course, I've got all my positional and prospects and all that stuff coming up. In the next week or so. A little behind the ball this year because we had the YouTube channel collapse with the Super Bowl live stream, trying to keep it monetized. But we are still monetized. Andrew's still going to be posting videos there when the thing gets back online more completely. We're just
Absolutely.
not able to live
I
stream.
definitely will be posting videos there. Maybe not this week, but in the upcoming weeks, though, you should see more videos from me.
And as far as the website goes, mostly that's just kind of a place to chat and find leagues and hang out right now. I am in the process of completely upgrading it. Not an easy task for somebody who doesn't know a thing one about WordPress. So
Mhm.
I'll probably have to outsource that a little bit. But in the meantime, there's still articles and stuff to read and just stuff to see and people to talk to. And,
People to talk to, people to jump into a mock draft with or something.
that's always the best place. All right, let's meet up on the site. We've got 5 people hanging out. It's Wednesday night. Who wants to do a mock draft? We're just chatting, talking sports anyways on the website. Let's mock draft.
Absolutely.
So it's pretty much same old garbage. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's my announcement. Situation normal, all fouled up.
Yep. So that'll about wrap it up for the first podcast of the spring. Definitely we'll be doing more. We'll probably be doing it back on Fantasy Sports Addicts Anonymous once the live streaming is back up. But until then, you should see more podcasts on my channel.
Yeah, we can always cross post too. No big deal with that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we'll keep everybody in the loop. And hey, I mean, if you want to get in mock drafts, you know where the place to do that is. First, either you hit us up on Twitter or you go to our website, fantasysportsaddicts.com. We're ready to mock. We're ready to draft. We've got drafts galore. I don't know about you. Like, I've been so busy drafting and mock drafting, I haven't even been able to keep up with half of anything going on. So I
Yeah.
like it that way, though. It's a great feeling. It's a great feeling. I like it.
Yeah.
So, hey, if you haven't mocked yet, you're way behind the clock. I don't know what that means, but yeah, behind the 8 ball. I don't know, whatever. All right, Andrew.
Our Twitter handle.
Yeah.
Go out with our Twitter handles. You can always find me at FantasyAid1. That's where I'm posting my articles. And you can always follow Tom at
we're Fantasy Sports Addicts Anonymous, but that's letter F, letter S, the word double, letter A, F, S, double A. And I think you can find us on all the social media sites with that handle.
All right. So thank you, Tom, for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me, Andrew. And I'll see you in the drafts tomorrow. And we'll be, well, maybe not in the same draft, but we'll all be talking and drafting at the same time.
Absolutely. So for Fantasy Aid, I'm Andrew. That's Tom. And thanks for watching.
Later.